and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The prayer will be offered by the delegate from Prince George's County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Good morning,
Ladies-
everyone.
Good morning. That's the voice of the future. This prayer was written by Rabbi Irwin Keller in early 2016, but it resonates so much for what's going on in the world today. It is a prayer before reading the news. My God, the soul you have placed in me is pure and vulnerable. I am afraid that looking at today's news will be painful. Encircle me in a robe of light so that I can witness the wounds of the world without being wounded myself. Let me learn what I need to know in order to be of my greatest use without being overwhelmed by despair. I feel your protective light now as I open myself to the world's suffering and the world's joys. Amen.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Are there anyone in the back? Can you see if there's anyone in the back? We'll give it a minute for those that are coming in. Okay. Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk would take the call. There being 130 members present, the House is now in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, January 29, 2026.
Recognize the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
So much to be considered, the reading of the journal.
So order petitions, memorials, and other papers. Consent calendar of introductory House bills number 22. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 615, Delegate Cullison, Health.
Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much to be considered the reading of House Bills 615 through 649.
Hearing no objection, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees. Consent calendar of introductory House bills number 23. The clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 650, Delegate Rosenberg, Judiciary.
Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much to be considered the reading of House Bills 650 through 666.
Hearing no objection, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees. The clerk will read the bond initiatives and the committee assignment.
Introductory House Bond Initiatives number 13, January 30th, 2026. Introductory House Bond Initiatives number 14, January 30th, 2026.
Thank you. Thank you for being quiet. I do not want to use this. Okay? It's like I remember when my kids were little and they did not behave properly, I would say, do you want the educated American woman or do you want the Dominican Latina with the chancleta? And they will say, I want the educated woman. Okay, not that Dominicans are not educated, but we tend to go with a chancleta. And when we throw it, it goes far. Oh my goodness gracious. All right, Special Order Calendar, House Bill 444. Recognizing the maker of the motion.
House Bill 444, Public Safety, Immigration Enforcement Agreements, Prohibition. Favorable report is amended and adopted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Actually,
No, excuse me, I was recognizing
I thought you recognized me, I'm sorry.
the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have an amendment at the desk, amendment number 483-626.
Amendment number 1.
So order.
Okay. So, colleagues, we've had this 287G bill for years. We've been discussing this issue for years. I spent a little bit of my time this week watching some of the committee testimony on the bill from the majority party, to be honest with you. And the overarching theme is that this program, well, first and foremost, there's a genuine misunderstanding of what this program is, but I will say this. The concern is that people are getting picked up from just traffic tickets, and they're getting exported out of our state, deported, sent to facilities. I even heard the majority leader bringing that issue up, so I'm here to clarify it. This amendment says that you can have a 287G program that just deals with crimes of violence. So these are the crimes in our state that are the worst of the worst. Crimes of violence: murder, rape, sexual assault, child abuse, the worst of the worst. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to see everybody in here put the money where their mouth is. Do we want to be a state, a sanctuary state for people that commit crimes of violence? Is that who we're protecting in the state of Maryland? People that commit the worst offenses that this body has recognized as the worst of the worst. So forget about the traffic tickets. Forget about all these minor offenses that may be arrestable offenses technically. This is going to limit the program to just crimes of violence. So, Madam Speaker, with that, I move this amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you. Colleagues, I would urge this body to resist the amendment. Actually, if someone is arrested for a crime of the violence, that is the worst of the worst. And they're not going to be in a local detention center. They're actually going to be in Jessup. They're going to be locked up for quite a significant amount of time. And currently under federal law, when that individual is released from Jessup, the ICE will get notified, and they will have 48 hours in which to pick up that individual upon release from their incarceration. And so therefore, this amendment is actually not necessary, nor is it needed. Additionally, this amendment deals with individuals who have been charged and not convicted. And I think it's really important that we understand the distinction here, that this person has not even been found guilty of anything, is what this amendment proposes. And for those reasons, I urge this body to resist the amendment.
Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
My pleasure.
So for clarification purposes, respectfully, that is not how it works. So for example, in let's say Prince George's County, if somebody shoots someone in Prince George's County, they're not brought to Jessup. They're brought to their local jail first, after they've just been charged with murder for shooting someone. So that's the issue. That's what we're talking about here. There is a process. And respectfully, what you just described is not how the process works. And so what this is saying is, yeah, if somebody has been charged with a crime of violence, local authorities show up because someone's been shot, someone's been raped, someone's been murdered, someone's been assaulted. That's what this is dealing with. And that's why we need this program here, is because these are the worst of the worst. This isn't the traffic offenders. This isn't all those examples that I keep hearing in committee, people getting arrested for minor offenses. This is the worst of the worst. And I don't want Maryland to be a sanctuary for people that commit the worst offenses because of something else. Because as we all know, the 287G program ain't what you're seeing on television. It only deals with jails. And so you're telling me you want somebody coming to a local jail who's just committed the worst offense in our state. We want to make it a sanctuary for that person. So that's why we need to pass this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And again, I'm going to respectfully disagree with the gentleman from Frederick County. Again, you are asking for someone not to be held accountable for the crime that they have committed in this state. You are asking for them not to be adjudicated by a judge for a horrendous crime that they have committed in this state. That's what you're proposing with this amendment. That's exactly what you're proposing with this amendment, that that person will not be held accountable for the crime that they have been alleged to commit.
Final bite for my point.
Let me recognize you.
Thank
One
you.
second. Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you,
You're
Madam
welcome.
Speaker. Just to clarify, once again, unfortunately that is not the process, because here's how it works is if you commit a crime in this country, you serve your time and then you get deported. And so what this merely states is that there's a notification for immigration and customs official doesn't mean that the person who murdered someone in Prince George's County is not held accountable in this country, in this state, and then serves time for it. It just means that there's a coordination, as it should be, because we have, and you may hear about it later, we had someone who murdered someone in Harford County, but also did a violent crime in another state. So this does not supersede anything. It does not circumvent anything. It just says that in Maryland, we hold people that commit the worst of the worst offenses accountable. And by the way, if they happen to also have other issues, we can address that too. But at a minimum, we should be keeping our community safe by limiting the program to crimes of violence. So for those reasons, I ask this body to move this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And one, I don't see notice in this amendment, but more importantly, I do believe that the good delegate, when we voted this provision down twice last year when it was before this body. And so I find it very rich that now all of a sudden he's in favor of something that he voted against last session. Colleagues, I ask you to resist the amendment.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
My pleasure.
I'd like to ask a couple more questions now that we're on this inquiry here. You know, so the maker of the amendment, do you believe that the way this is constructed guarantees that someone convicted of a crime of violence in Maryland, someone needs to be convicted of a crime of violence, do their time in a Maryland institution and give justice to those victims in Maryland? Do you believe that that needs to happen before your amendment would take effect and deport that person?
No, I don't. What I believe is that...
It's not in writing there. So where does that come into play?
What I believe is that you guys are... what I believe is that this bill, HB 444, is creating a loophole to give sanctuary to people that commit crimes of violence. It's unacceptable. Unacceptable. So that's my concern, is that you're creating a loophole so that people in this country, in our state, who create crimes of violence are given a special status. And that is completely unacceptable.
Are you aware that ICE is currently deporting people before they've finished their trials here and have been able to serve time in the United States? Do you know right now that the world's biggest jewel thief got deported out of the country before their trial here? That these are actually things that are happening.
Are stealing jewels crimes of violence?
Well, I'm just asking you if you're aware that this is happening.
So,
ICE is actually taking the opportunity to deport people before they've had their trial and before they've done their time.
So
why wouldn't we wait until after?
Right. Here's the issue: is there's a tremendous amount of conflation with immigration enforcement generally and the 287G program that's been operational in this state for a long time. My amendment's very narrow. It only addresses crimes of violence. Now, as I mentioned before with the other speaker, is that there's a process, and how it works is that if you commit an offense in our state, generally you would get adjudicated, you'd serve time, and then if there's additional issues outside of Maryland, then that would occur after that.
Okay, well, can I just ask you then something about someone who maybe didn't do the crime of violence, since you're not requiring a conviction? Were you aware that ICE is deporting people who were actually found guilty, or not guilty, of the offense that they were charged with?
Well, listen, the issue you keep referring to is it's due process. You have to have due process, right?
Don't have that right now.
Here's what I'm saying.
ICE is currently ignoring 100 court orders in Minnesota alone. Tom Homan's about to be called into contempt of court.
Wow. I know you want to make this about a national issue. I'm just referring to...
This is a national issue.
Here's what this is about. You are creating an exemption for people that commit the worst crimes in our state to have a special status where there's no cooperation.
That's not what's going on at all. Okay. Your bill is creating an exception for them to not face justice in court. I respectfully urge you to reject this amendment.
That is not true. That is not true. That is not true. There is nothing in this amendment that says, and I'll flip it on you, there is nothing in this amendment that says that someone who commits a crimes of violence must be held accountable in Maryland before they can be deported. And that's what you're suggesting this amendment does. But it doesn't say it. Correct? Would the majority leader rise and answer that? Does this amendment say...
Your amendment says they can be deported at the mere charging of a crime, and we currently have many cases where ICE is in fact deporting them before they've done their time. I don't know how else to explain it.
It doesn't say that. Here's what my amendment says, is that...
This is happening.
That's not true. That's not true. Let me ask this. Did you visit the 287? Have you visited a 287G program?
I have not visited a 287G program.
How is it that the majority leader, respectfully, the person who's the lead on these issues, this program has been in this state since 2008. How is it that nobody has taken the time to even visit the facility to understand what the program is? So we're debating a bill about a program that no one's taken the time to visit.
What aspect of what I'm describing here requires a facility visit? It's plainly I don't have to step into the facility to know that ICE is going to deport people before they do time in a Maryland facility under your amendment.
Well, you don't understand the program.
I can tell that to you without stepping into the facility. It's plain on the face, and we have evidence.
I have visited. Yep, because I have one in Frederick. I've read the MOU.
Respectfully.
Let's go back, if I may. Let's stick with the amendment, please.
Okay, so I'm going to stick to the amendment. Everything
you.
you described is not in my amendment. It's not. Everything
The
you
word conviction
hypothesized
is not in your
about is
amendment,
not in my
and
amendment.
it appears in other amendments that we're going to
Not in my
see from
amendment.
your party later today.
Not in my amendment. Okay. Thank
The
you, Madam
question before the House is the adoption of the
Madam
amendment.
Speaker.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, say no. Okay. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. Oh,
To explain my vote,
sorry.
Madam Speaker, I just want
Go
to
ahead.
briefly say this. I heard a lot of stuff in this chamber about how much it costs to incarcerate individuals and how we should let people out of jail early because of the costs, not only to society, but the costs to our budget. I live in a community that has not one but two extremely large state prisons where the worst of the worst, for the most part, are incarcerated, including the North Branch Correctional Institution. 75% of people there are there for murder. And we can't hire enough people and we can't spend enough money. It costs a lot of money to incarcerate people. What the gentleman's amendment does is says, hey, if you're charged with murder and we let ICE know and ICE goes, oh, guess what? He's also a member of Tren de Agua and MS-13 and was wanted on another charge in another state. I don't think Baltimore City or PG County should have to pay the money to house and feed him for the next 9 months while he's awaiting trial, because we're going to send him back outside of the country today and save all of you money. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my vote, one of the things that we all see in this chamber that we all seem to unite on is when children are in here, and it brings a little joy to our hearts, and it kind of brings us together. There's nothing like, and I tell you, every parent in here will tell you the same thing, there is nothing like the day your child is born. I mean, nothing. Everything in your world changes from that point forward. And I support this amendment because we have approximately 300,000 children missing in the United States today. Many of them are sex trafficked. This amendment covers sex trafficking. That is a violent crime. If you have a child that is missing or is sex trafficked, wouldn't you want ICE to know who's trafficking them if they show up in a Maryland jail? My good friend from Baltimore City, Oriole historian, will tell you he remembers Javi Lopez. It's a true story. A girl showed up on my front door several years ago. A good friend of mine was friends with Javi Lopez and happened to call me. Javi Lopez's girlfriend at the time translated for us. The girl was being sex trafficked. We found her a safe haven to go to. That's always stuck with me, and it makes me sick to my stomach when I think about all these people that are missing in the United States and being sex trafficked, and we're not doing everything we can to stop it. This amendment is one small step to stopping that evil and that atrocity. That's why I wanted to stand and support it.
Recognizing the lady from Howard County, then I'm going to Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my vote, as I read the amendment, it says the state or unit of local government may enter into an immigration enforcement agreement for the purpose of enforcing civil immigration law when an individual has been charged with committing a crime of violence. And since I was raised to believe that there is innocence until proven guilty, it seems to me that that is not what it should be. It's not what America stands for. And since what I see with my own eyes are people who come to the United States following our immigration laws, who present themselves at the border, who apply for asylum, who then show up for all of their hearings and are deported anyway. So I don't see our government functioning the way it's supposed to, and they themselves are not following the law. This amendment presents problems every which way. Thank you very much. That's why I voted no.
Recognizing the delegate from Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
My
I'd like to
pleasure.
be listed in the red. Thank you.
Thank you. I did already call I took the call, but I allow it. So there being 93 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any other additional amendments to the bill to its title? Recognizing the delegate from Cecil County. Good morning.
Good morning, Carroll County.
Oh,
But we like Cecil too.
Okay. So I have a mistake here. Sorry.
It's okay. So thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 444-4030-26-1.
Amendment number 1.
Please so much move the reading of the amendment. So similar to...
Can you put the microphone closer to your mouth?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you. It's okay.
Following this vein of conversation that we've already started, I've made a lot of notes. I've been paying a lot of attention, and certainly we all are across the nation, but we are living in the state of Maryland. And in verifying what happens in this process, when you talk about conviction versus charge, when you talk about violent crimes, and my amendment deals with sex offenses against anyone, and especially against children. Sexual offenses against your child, my child, the children of the state of Maryland. Conceivably, before they reach Jessup, there is a large chance of that individual going back into the community to offend again. And when you say, do you want them to have a consequence here in the state of Maryland? Yes. But do you want to take the chance of releasing a violent sex offender into our communities to offend again and offend again and offend again while we're waiting for that process? I would say that family who had a child violated in the worst way possible would rather that child, they would rather their neighbor's children not have to go through something so heinous. And in the meantime, keep them off the streets, let the process go through. We're a world full of data and ways to check things out. If somebody is being unfairly treated, there is a process for that. In the meantime, let's keep these offenders off of our streets while the process is going into place. Have them removed from the community so that children are not harmed. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Welcome. Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, I'm going to ask this body to resist the amendment. We definitely want child sex offenders to be held accountable for their crimes. And this amendment, unfortunately, does not do that. This amendment, again, deals with someone who has been charged of a crime. They would not be held accountable in our court system. They would not be afforded due process under the law and under the Constitution with this amendment. And so if we're talking about making sure that, victims are being heard, they will not have that opportunity under this amendment. And I think that's a problem. And so for those reasons, I ask this body to resist the amendment.
Recognizing the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So I still am saying this amendment is very narrow in those who are committing sexual offenses, violent sexual offenses. Bringing them off of the streets, protecting our communities, protecting other children from something like this happening to them. If we're not going to protect, I hear someone talking about jewel thieves. We're not talking about a jewel thief. We are talking about someone offending a child in our community. If we can't do this, shame on us. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will call the roll. There being 95 votes in the negative, the amendment fails.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 8935211.
Amendment number 1.
Thank you. So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
So we've heard some dialogue that, in my interpretation, kind of tells our constituents that Maryland has a desire to be a sanctuary state for the worst of the worst, violent offenders, sex offenders. So I'm asking this body to make consideration for the most vulnerable. We always talk about the children. So what this amendment would do would allow an immigration and customs enforcement agreement to continue for those who commit child abuse in the first degree, those who are charged with child abuse in the first degree. This could mean somebody causing brain injury, broken bones, bleeding within the skull, inflicting severe burns. I mean, pretty sick-minded folks, starving children, permanent disfigurement. I hope no one here in this body would not want anything but the maximum amount of coordination and the most effective coordination with law enforcement at every level to make sure that this person gets what they deserve and protects our Maryland constituents. With that, Madam Speaker, I ask you to move the amendment.
Recognizing the delegate from Southern Maryland.
Madam Speaker, I have a question for the maker of the amendment. I just want to make sure I understand. So we're talking about that, definitely the worst of the worst. So your amendment, if passed, will allow these individuals, before they are indeed convicted, to be removed from not only Maryland but our country, correct?
I think we've had that discussion already and determined that what this amendment would do would allow for coordination of law enforcement at all levels so that they can determine if having that person tried here is the best thing, or as we heard from our minority leader, it allows for coordination to find out if there's other crimes that they've committed. So this allows maximum coordination for the most effective, the highest level of protection and accountability to that person that's charged with committing these crimes.
And I appreciate that. I guess my concern is, obviously, you know, the Sixth Amendment applies to all people charged with crimes. They're obviously allowed a jury trial in the state and districts with which they are charged. My bigger concern is, by this logic, if someone does something horrible to my child, they get charged, they can be removed and sent home before they're doing the time that they're supposed to do. Correct?
I think that we all have heard of cases where that could be, but I don't think it's the norm.
Well, that could be is my problem. Because if somebody does something, and I've fought for victims ever since I've gotten here, somebody does something to my child, I want them to have their due process, because at the end of the day, I want them to be punished. There's no guarantee if they're sent back to their country of origin that they won't immediately be set free. And if this person is the dangerous person that we're arguing about, this pedophile, this abuser, we're just setting them free in another country because we don't have any control over how they're treated once they're sent home. And I say that because I appreciate your intent, but I see the intent of what's going on in this country, the 3,000 people deported a day. Their goal is to meet those numbers, not satisfy justice. So my concern is that very person, that very villain you're talking about, could be walking the streets in a month's time because he's deported back to his home country or wherever they decide to send him to, and justice is not done for my family and my child. So unless you can tell me I'm wrong, I would obviously have to oppose this amendment.
Well, I think we all have to agree mistakes happen. I mean, we all make mistakes ourselves individually.
Not with my child.
No, I understand. And I hope that no mistakes happen. But I don't think I can realistically stand here and say, I can guarantee you a mistake will never happen in coordination with any law enforcement. It happens here locally that someone's released and we find out that it's an error. So it can happen at any level. And all this does is guarantees that there's coordination at all levels, from local on up to the federal level, and that the entire picture is looked at. Consideration is given for things that are, that this person may have done elsewhere, and we weren't even aware here at the local level. So this, to me, provides the highest standard of accountability to that individual.
And I guess, and again, I appreciate that, but it sounds like there is no guarantee in your amendment, or I think many of the amendments following, that this person will be punished for the crime they've committed, unless we consider that punishment being deported. So if we have a child sex offender receiving 40 years in jail because that's what he's going to be facing, if ICE gets to him first and deports him, there is no guarantee that justice for those victims will be done under this or apparently many of these amendments, because that's a violation in our country. And no other country is required. Jurisdiction is an issue here. Once they go back to their home country, unless your amendment says something different, there is zero requirement that they be held accountable or punished for the crimes they've committed in this country. Am I correct?
That's an assumption that you're making.
No, I'm saying is by your amendment, are they required to be prosecuted under the laws of this state and this country prior to being, handled by ICE?
The amendment requires the highest level of communication at all levels to assure that there's coordinated efforts to make sure the person's accountable at all levels.
Madam
Thank you.
Speaker.
I move the amendment.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Would the maker of the amendment yield for a question? So we're talking in hypotheticals here. I just pulled out some data sheets, and I just want to get into actual numbers here. Were you aware, and I just want to use 2023 as an example, that in that year, 100% of Harford County's detainers and 83% of Cecil County detainers were for people with no convictions whatsoever? I'm going to guess by the silence that you did not know that. I'm actually learning some of these data points anew. But
You're assuming, because I was delaying for a second to gather my thoughts on this. As far as detainers in Harford County, detainers in whatever other county you mentioned, I did not look at.
Okay, so here's the problem I have with this. Stop me if my logic is wrong, but I can only draw a few conclusions from this. If 100% of detainers in 2023 in Harford County were for people with not convictions, then one of maybe three things happened to these individuals. They were deported before their trial, which is what the parliamentarian is concerned about. They were found not guilty and deported anyway, which is a concern, should be a concern for all of us. Or they were just not criminals whatsoever, and they got swept up somehow in what ICE is now calling collateral. Am I correct that one of those three scenarios has to be true in order to get to a scenario where 100%?
Can we stick to the amendment?
The amendment?
No, the amendment is for
Minute one
people
at a time,
charged-
please. The gentlemen
people
that are not
charged with child
recognized
abuse.
have a seat. I just want the majority leader and the maker of the amendment up, please.
Will the majority leader yield?
I didn't get my question answered, but sure.
Thank you. Is it true that there are two models, there are multiple models for 287G, including the warrant service officer model? Is it true that in those cases, those officers who are deputized can investigate?
Would the majority leader please stand up?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it true or is it not true that in those cases, the officers who have been deputized could have found a significant previous infraction, possibly in another country, that would facilitate a detainer but not require that that person coming into a detention center could have been committed of a crime?
Yes, this was a scenario that was posed to us in the Judiciary Committee the other day. And just so everyone knows what the scenario is, apparently they're going to explain away this 100% non-conviction rate by saying they must have had a conviction in another state or another country, maybe. I asked the question, okay, so tell me more about this other conviction that we didn't know about that is not a Maryland conviction. How long ago could this conviction have happened? How frivolous of a charge could this conviction have been? And we've heard people who had 20 years of positive contributions to society who got deported, who were actually here lawful presence, but a 20-year-old shoplifting conviction got them deported. So if that's the scenario that you're talking about, certainly that is a scenario that could happen. But I do not believe you're going to get 100% of our county's cases explained away that way.
I just want to clarify what we do agree on.
Not much on this.
Not much, but there's some. And I think everybody deserves to understand it. That there are multiple models implemented by 287G.
And to be clear, there are multiple models.
Okay.
We de facto banned one of those models, the type of models that has ICE agents and deputizing local police to run around in the street asking people for their citizenship status.
That's
we
not in
banned
question.
that. We banned that form of ICE agreement in Maryland. You know why? Because we had multiple lawsuits
On
settled
the
in
amendment.
counties. on
The
this
gentleman,
point.
let him finish his point, please.
We had multiple lawsuits settled on exactly this point in Maryland. In Frederick, twice they got sued, and we had much talk about the fact that they were bothering people having lunch in a public park asking for their citizenship status, and we banned that practice and that form of ICE agreement, and now are left with these jail-based agreements that are in existence. So yes, the sordid history of how this has gone in Maryland has led us to narrow the options on the table.
And I want to make that point because that is a red herring. It is not what we're talking about. It's not what the bill is about. It is not what the amendment is about. The point I'd like to offer today is that
I would respectfully disagree.
if I could,
ICE's record and the record of
The
287G.
majority leader, let him finish his question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The point I want to make today is that 287G does two things. It allows the service of warrants to provide due process, and under the warrant service officer model, it allows investigations of all people coming into a detention center. So there may be scenarios.
Are these judicial warrants or are they detainers?
These are warrants under the warrant service officer model.
They just keep using this word warrant. ICE uses the word warrant very differently than I think we think about the term warrant in this country. So I would really hesitate to suggest that there are warrants being used by ICE.
The
There are
warrant
not.
service officer model, what they do in addition to the typical 287G implementation is they do background investigations. And I believe what you're speaking about today, because not everybody who gets a detainer, the purpose of the detainer is for when a person who is charged and convicted and is arrested and is about to be released, the purpose of that 287G implementation is to provide due process so that local law enforcement can hold that person briefly beyond the time of detention.
Is actually to deprive them of due process.
Hold on a second. Let's have one rule for everyone here.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Please, 1 second. Let me finish. Thank you. For this and every other bill, every other amendment, if you get up, you can finish your thought. I know we want to jump right in, give the person the courtesy, finish your thought, and then we will go to the other person, okay?
Got it.
Go ahead.
The purpose of the warrant service officer model is it allows local officers to be deputized to investigate the background of a person who was charged and arrested and convicted for an otherwise related issue. So yes, there may be folks who are not convicted but have been found to be charged locally and also convicted elsewhere for a crime. And I wanted to point out that those numbers are indeed legitimate.
Recognizing the floor leader.
I think we've gotten a little off track from the amendment that is before us right now. And so I just want us to really just kind of focus on the amendment. We'll have time to talk about the bill. But really, again, I just urge this body to resist the amendment that has been presented. Again, it is not affording individuals their due process rights under the United States Constitution. And for those reasons, I ask everyone to vote against the amendment.
Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I heard an argument that from the delegate from Charles County that he has a concern that if someone was charged with the crime as outlined in this amendment, that they would be deported before they're held accountable for that child abuse. So it's almost as if you're suggesting that an individual would just be deported to another country to have maybe margaritas with a U.S. senator down in South America. But that's not the case, because how it works, I'll give you an example. There's usually federal laws where it's against a federal law to abuse children, and it's also illegal to abuse children under state law. So in Maryland, it happens quite frequently where you could find somebody, get arrested for violated offenses, and the state's attorney coordinates with the U.S. attorney and says, hey, who wants this? Do we want to charge this guy under the federal law? Do we want to hold him accountable under the state law? In many cases, if it's an egregious act, the feds take it and the state drops the charges against the individual because they're held accountable federally, maybe even incarcerated federally. And so what I didn't hear from the majority leader is that you gave a scenario where 100% of the folks in Harford County is the example you gave, but you didn't say that all of them are now sipping margaritas in another country walking freely. They could be held in federal detention. They could be held in another state. These are a lot of hypotheticals. My point is this: to suggest that the federal government is giving these abusers a free pass is ridiculous. Because what I've heard from this body, and even from the majority leader, is your concern is that they're being sent to prisons in other countries. So on one hand, I got a delegate who's concerned they're not being held accountable. And on the other hand, you know, I'm hearing a different argument. So which one is it? I will say this, and I think we could all agree, the feds ain't letting these people go. They're not being let go to have margaritas, to hang out. They're probably being held accountable federally, and if they've committed another offense in another state, maybe they're being held accountable there. What usually happens is there's a coordination to see what is the best way to hold these people accountable. What you want, because you hate the president, is you want no coordination. No coordination whatsoever. I want no coordination. I want no phone call, no text, no emails. We hate the president. I want nothing to do with him. That ain't public safety. There has to be a level of coordination to find the best way to hold these vicious offenders accountable. So that's what this is about. It's about coordination. We're going to hear all these scenarios we aren't, but to suggest that the federal government is not holding people who commit violent offenses in our state, oh, and by the way, are also here illegally accountable, is a ludicrous argument. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. And for the record, you're not supposed to infer other people's intention. As we move forward on this floor and we get up on the floor to make arguments, please do not, you know, again, you know, infer people's intention or describe their emotions, okay? Let's not speculate about those. Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, and I appreciate the delegate's passion. First of all, child abuse is a state crime. Now, they could also be found, you know, being accused of some other federal crime. And yes, coordination would take place whether these agreements are around or not. The removal of the 287G agreement does not prevent our local state's attorneys from coordinating with the U.S. attorney when a federal crime has been committed in any of these cases. So to say that this is disrupting that coordination is blatantly false, because that can still occur and has continued to occur in states where these agreements have been banned. And so again, I think we're getting off track from the amendment. Again, I ask this body to resist the amendment. Thank you,
The question
Madam Speaker.
before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. No. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Recognizing the delegate from Cecil and Harford County. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at desk, 523628-1.
Amendment number 1.
So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
So what my amendment does very simply is allow for coordination whenever somebody is charged with murder or rape. Beaten with a rock, 15 to 20 head wounds, all of which you could see her skull. Strangulation that caused hemorrhaging 3 layers of tissue down. Injuries all over her body, brutally raped, covered in blood, and she did not die immediately. She suffered for a time before succumbing to her injuries. That was Rachel Morin, and that horrible crime occurred in my legislative district. It's just hard to imagine in a situation like that we wouldn't want to coordinate with all levels of law enforcement to make sure everybody knows about this and we can address it appropriately. And they did. And this is a situation where this was somebody who is here illegally, who committed this crime, who was extradited back to Maryland, and has been convicted of life in prison. So this shows the 287G program does not prohibit individuals from facing justice here in the United States or in the state of Maryland. By repealing this program, unfortunately, what it creates, I think it's going to have unintended consequences. Let me talk about that. The majority leader was discussing Harford County has 100% of the individuals who's reported in the 287G program to be handled by federal authorities. I think it was 15 last year. But you know what Harford County had 0 of? ICE raids. No ICE agents going into communities in Harford County. No collateral apprehensions or deportations in Harford County. That doesn't happen because the 287G program does the job that ICE would normally do otherwise. So in Harford County, immigrant communities feel safe because they know that coordination's happening at the jail. I know this is a very emotional and hot topic right now. I want to try to put the politics aside, think about the practical application, think about the victims, stay on the facts. And I know, I don't want to assume people's intentions, but I know folks generally don't want those collateral deportations to happen in this body, right? I know we want to make sure we're holding the bad guys accountable, right? And that's all my amendment does, is holds those, it doesn't even hold people accountable. It doesn't even say they're going to be deported. All it says is the notification will happen for individuals who have been charged with rape and murder. That's all it does. With that, Madam Speaker, I move my amendment.
Thank you. Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I mean, what happened with the Rachel Moore incident was horrible. I don't think anyone in this chamber would disagree with you on that. The gentleman who killed her was arrested, but was not arrested because of a 287G agreement. He was arrested because of good policing that occurred in your county. That's how he got caught and was arrested, and then there was a trial, and then he was convicted of that crime. But that had nothing to do with 287G. The amendment that's before us, colleagues, again, has to do with someone being charged, not convicted of any crime, just being deported to God knows where, without being held accountable, without facing the victims that they have allegedly harmed in the situation in which you're describing. It's similar to the other amendments that we've had before as colleagues, and I would just simply ask this body to resist the amendment. Thank you.
Recognizing the maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
My pleasure.
And just, I'm trying to stay on the facts here, and I appreciate your position and the sponsor of the bill. Again, Harford County has a 287G program. Notifications were made after the arrest, and that individual faced justice, and that individual wasn't deported, and that person was convicted of a life sentence. So in no way does the 287G program make sure people don't face justice. Harford County has a very successful 287G program, and that individual faced justice, and that individual was not deported. So maybe in this situation, this person was not apprehended because of the 287G program. Absolutely. But even with the 287G program in place, it did not prevent this individual from facing justice here in the state of Maryland. So those are the facts. And again, all the 287G program is a notification. We're just going to notify federal authorities that this individual was charged with murder and rape. And I guarantee local authorities want individuals who commit these brutal crimes to face justice here in the state of Maryland. I want them to face justice in the state of Maryland. I'm glad that individual faced justice in Harford County and here in the state of Maryland, and prosecutors from the state down were involved to make sure that person faced justice. I don't want these people to be deported and not face justice. And if I thought that was the case, I would not be standing up right now. But that's not the case. So I'm grateful for everybody's conversations. I understand everybody's positions, but let's stay on the facts. This does not do that. And with that, Madam Speaker, I move the amendment.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you. And again, I just urge the body to resist the amendment. Deportation does not equal justice, and so we want to focus on the justice part in our law. Thank you.
Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Would the floor leader please rise for a couple questions? Hey, good morning.
Morning.
I'm trying to understand your position. I think I'm coming from a point that I am confused on it, same as the minority whip up there. You're saying that, well, let's say if you had a scenario where another state has a sanctuary law, and maybe that person was arrested for rape, they're an illegal alien, and they're on pretrial release. And then they're picked up in someplace in Maryland. Well, no, let's say a DWI. Now, your position is not to contact ICE, but to let them go into the community because you want them to go to trial?
So first of all, sanctuary is not a legal term of art. I just want the body to be very clear about that. There's no Supreme Court opinion or any type of legal definition as it relates to the word sanctuary. So I just want to make that point. Second of all, what we are proposing here is that if someone was arrested in another state for a crime, they were released on pretrial and decided to come here to Maryland. When they were arrested in that other state, their fingerprints would have gone into the federal NICS system, which ICE is a part of. And so if there was an active detainer for that individual in that other state, ICE would have received notification because of the NICS system that operates. And so they would have ICE still would have been notified even in that particular state that you're inferring about. So whether or not ICE decides not to come get them, that has nothing to do with us. That has to do with ICE. Well, and ICE has every right to say, you know, we see the notification, but we're not going to go and get that person. But that has nothing to do with what's before us right now. So I can't.
I think maybe you misunderstood my question because you kind of talked around that. The person's in jail for DWI, which is normally let go in what? 7 or 8 hours.
Right.
Your position is that you're going to let that person back out into the community.
Actually, a judge would make that determination whether or not they would be let back out into the community.
But the bill is to stop any corrections officers from contacting ICE, correct?
Yeah, the judge would make that determination. The judge is going to look to see, oh, there's an outstanding warrant. They're going to look at any prior convictions of that individual during pretrial to make a determination whether or not to release that individual on bond or not. That's typically what happens under our judicial system, with or without this agreement. That will still continue to take place.
So that's a long verbiage for yes. You're releasing
No,
that
that's not a
person
yes.
out.
That is a no.
So
Again, that person
that's
will
not,
be- the person
that's what we
again will
just said
be
the last
arrested.
3 times that we had amendments, that this person were going to withstand trial. Your position is to release them back out into the community.
What I'm saying, I'm not saying to release them back into the community. What I'm saying is that we're going to let the system do what the system is supposed to do and provide due process for that individual. That individual is picked up on a DWI. They're going to be placed in a local detention center, and then they're going to have a bail review hearing. And at that point, a judge is going to make a determination about what should happen with that individual, okay? And that determination is going to be made by a judge in our state, in our court system. And whether a 287G agreement exists or not is irrelevant. And we're going to hold that person accountable for that DWI here in the state of Maryland.
Well, the majority leader in the previous debate just said in Harford County, 100% of those people were picked up in small traffic offenses and turned over to ICE. This is a very serious charge. So I can see the same situation playing out that you're saying, that you have a rapist that might have been previously convicted or under pretrial from somewhere else that has a very more liberal opinion. And the position in Maryland, if they're in Maryland on a secondary charge, is to let them go back out into the street. And my question to you is, how does that make my citizens that I represent any safer? To return a criminal, previously convicted sex offender back out into the street that has no ties to this community.
Right, if a judge thinks that that person is a danger to society, that judge is not going to allow the release of that individual back into society. That person will continue to be held until their trial. That's how our system works.
So if you don't have the 287G, how are you even figuring out who that person is?
The judge will be looking at the facts.
Every person that goes and is arrested, whether it's for drunk and disorderly, is going to go in front of that judge, and that judge is going to make that decision?
Yeah, that's our system. That is how our system works.
One final question for you. Since we're trusting illegal aliens that are criminals to come back for a trial, like my friend from Charles County said, do you have any data that shows how many people don't come back to trial if they're in that situation?
Just in general?
In general.
No, I don't have that data in front of me, but I'm sure the judiciary can provide that to you.
I'd be interested to hear that, because I'm looking online at some statistics, since we're quoting statistics, that 34% of non-detained respondents don't even show up for removal orders of court hearings. So we keep talking about all this justice. We need to come back here and have for justice. Once you let these people out, they have no ties to the community, they're not from around here, guess what? You don't get justice because they're out of here. And then ICE is running after them throughout the community and arresting them in the community because you didn't arrest them in the jail. And that's exactly what the situation that's going on up in Minnesota now. It's chaos, and it's caused by politicians and these silly policies like that. I stand to support the gentleman's amendment because it's common sense that we don't want rapists returned to our communities. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Again, I ask that we stick to the amendment that is before us, and I'm going to trust the judges that we have in our state to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question for the floor leader.
Sure.
Good morning.
Mr. Whip.
How are you, District
Good.
Mate? I have a question, because there's been a lot of talk about the agreements being needed, the agreements having to be in place. You know, there are several states that are very similar to ours in thought and in majority that no longer have these agreements. How do they determine someone in the court system is undocumented?
Yeah, so as was stated earlier, with the states that no longer have these agreements, it does not prevent ICE, if there is an active detainer for that individual, to still come and pick up that individual. ICE still would have that active detainer on file for that individual, and they would still have every right to still come up, pick up that individual in states where these agreements are banned.
So the most recent state, to my knowledge, that has passed a prohibition of these agreements is Delaware. Do you think Delaware has an increase of undocumented folks wreaking havoc on their communities?
Not that I'm aware of.
What about New Jersey?
Not that I'm aware of.
California?
No.
Thank you. I have a question now for the maker of the amendment.
Yes.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I want to talk about facts since that's what you want to focus on.
Absolutely.
Out of the last 7 years in this state where we've had detainers, do you know the number of people that were detained?
I do not.
I will educate you on this morning. It is 771 people. Do you think that's a lot of folks that have been arrested on ICE detainers?
No.
Okay, well, out of that 771, do you know the percentage or the number of them that were convicted of a level 1 offense, one of the offenses that are listed in your amendment?
I do not.
4, so 0.5%. Do you think that is because ICE isn't good at their job? Do you think that's because our local law enforcement isn't doing a good job of trying to detain some of the most serious offenders in our communities?
I can't speak to that.
Well, I can. I think we have some of the best law enforcement in the country here in our state, and they're doing the best job that they can with the tools necessary. 287G clearly is not one of those tools that is getting violent offenders that are based in this amendment off of our streets. And so I ask our colleagues to vote no on the amendment. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
So I guess my question for you is it safer for the community and our immigrant community for these notifications and these handoffs to happen at the jail or in the community?
I think what is safer is that we have policies that reflect the moment. Right now, to answer your question, since I've been asked, we are not seeing the best and brightest coming out of our federal law enforcement. We are not seeing the best and brightest enforcement happening at that level. And so what I want is actual law enforcement. I have 7 municipalities in my district, and all 7 have reached out with concerns around how do we figure out how to best coordinate, because the feds are not talking to our local law enforcement. They're not saying, hey, I'm coming into this community or that community in the county that I represent, in the municipalities that I represent. So to your question about whether or not it's safer, I don't think in this moment the federal law enforcement is providing the best practices when it comes to keeping our community safe.
That wasn't my question. That was what my question was.
That was
sir.
my answer.
With respect to my question is this. Well, you're not answering my question, sir. What my question is this. Is it safer for ICE to be notified at the jail to make a determination to put a detainer at the jail, or for after the fact, ICE still have to go into a community, an immigrant community, and not only go into the community and some of the collateral things that go along with that, but also have collateral deportations by having to go identify the individual in the community? Is it safer for it to happen at the jail, or is it safer to happen in the community?
I think the question...
It's only one or the other.
Well, no, I get the answer. You get the ask. So my answer is the question that you asked puts up a scenario in which, one, immigrants only live with immigrants. That's not the case. Immigrants live in very diverse communities, as you know. And so the collateral damage to people is magnified, period, because of the practices that are happening right now through this federal law enforcement. And so I agree. Having ICE agents in our communities is not safe. I'm glad you agree that having ICE agents in our communities is not safe. What I'm simply saying is, on this amendment, it does not help keep our community safe by saying that they have to do the notification.
Again, 2 times in your statement, you assumed my position on things. Not the case. I simply ask a simple question. Which one is safer?
I've answered your question. I don't think you're going to get anything else out of me. But on the amendment, Madam Speaker, I ask our colleagues to vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no? The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, explain my vote.
The gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
I just want to explain why I'm voting for this amendment. We've had several amendments now on crimes that are affecting the most vulnerable, and we don't seem to be able to come to any agreement. We listen to people's opinions, and that's fine. I would submit that this bill really isn't ready for prime time if we're sitting here talking about how we protect children and we can't come to a unified agreement that they are paramount and we have to sit back and nitpick about this or that. The bottom line is people don't go, when they get charged for something, they don't necessarily go anywhere. But we're trying to make something finite here and we can't seem to come to an agreement. Maybe this bill needs to go back and get worked on. Thank you.
Explain my vote.
Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore County.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
To explain my green vote, but mostly to respond to a comment that was just made, quote, "We don't have the best and brightest going into law enforcement." And I wholeheartedly disagree with you on that. I have family in law enforcement. Our law enforcement are wonderful, hardworking, dedicated individuals, and I don't think that was appropriate. Thank you.
Recognizing.
Thank you. And explaining my no vote on this amendment and explaining further the comments that was made since it was referenced. The comment was that we do have the best and brightest here in our state at our local and state levels. What isn't happening, unfortunately, is the recruitment of the best and brightest to our federal force. And while I have police officers in my family, my aunt and uncle, both served over 20 plus years in law enforcement, I know very personally the sacrifices that folks have. So I want our body to know that here the majority understands the sacrifices that law enforcement makes every single day. The choices they have to make every single day are choices that I choose not to make. That's why I get to sit on this floor with all of you. But I understand that my communities are protected. The law enforcement folks who suit up every day are protecting us. But unfortunately, the folks at the federal level aren't doing their best. They aren't sending their brightest. And until that improves, I will always stand on those words. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The clerk would take the call. There being 95 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Recognizing the minority leader. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk, 693221/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
All day long we've talked about we don't want to put people into ISIS custody and potentially deport them because they've only been charged and maybe they're innocent. And we've talked about we don't want to get people out of the country who are actually guilty because we want to punish them here. We want to pay to house and feed them and guard them and let them go into our educational programs in our prisons and do all the things, the rehabilitation things we do, only to deport them after they get out. That doesn't make a lot of sense. This amendment is a little bit different than what you've heard today. The amendment suggests only that local jurisdictions or law enforcement entities who have correctional responsibilities would be able to cooperate with the federal government for the civil immigration enforcement of the laws when an individual has been convicted of a crime and sentenced to a period of incarceration of longer than 180 days. Many of you who are not lawyers, and all the lawyers here, we talk too much and we try to explain things, but that is why they call it lawmaking. It's not insurance policy making, it's not shoemaking, it is lawmaking. And so the law is pretty darn relevant to how these things work in the real world. In the Maryland system in general, if you were sentenced to a period of incarceration greater than 18 months, you become a ward of the state of Maryland. You go into the Department of Corrections that maintains facilities from where I live all the way onto the Eastern Shore. The Eastern Correctional Institution doesn't have a lot of facilities along the 95 corridor, certainly has a couple, Jessup, a few others. If you are sentenced to a period of incarceration less than 18 months, generally, with very few exceptions, you are housed locally in the county in which you are convicted, in their local jail or detention center, whatever they call it. That's how it works. So for the worst of the worst offenders, the majority of those individuals are going to go DOC. They're going to walk out when they've pled guilty or when they are held, as my colleague from Frederick County said. They are not held in DOC, with very few exceptions, in case there's sometimes a security risk or an overflow risk, but 99% of the time, they are held in your local jails. Someone gets charged in Montgomery County or Allegheny County with murder, with rape, with the worst crimes. They are still held in your county until they receive their trial or plead guilty or somehow adjudicated to be permanently sentenced. So you can't make the argument on this amendment, we want to protect their due process rights. Maybe they were innocent. No, they were convicted. They pled guilty or they subjected themselves to adjudication by a judge or a jury and they were found guilty of whatever crime. And I think it's difficult. You know, I chose 180 days. We could choose a lot of different parameters, and if people were willing to compromise, which, my God, what a better body we would be and what a better country would be on this issue is if everyone just kept working together to compromise for better solutions. If you're willing to, I'm willing to say maybe 180 days isn't the right parameter, the right cutoff. I didn't want to say somebody who gets sentenced to jail for a weekend because of a driving offense, they automatically get subjected to ICE being picked up, even though many in my party would say, yes, they should. I wanted to try to be reasonable. That's a word that I think that we have lost in America. Reasonable. Reasonable people have the ability to reach wonderful results. Unreasonable people have the ability to simply smash at each other until someone collapses or until the system collapses. The amendment is very simple. You, the individual, is not here lawfully. I know there are people in this chamber who would like to say, I'd like to remove that. I'd like to allow people to be here regardless of their immigration status. But as I've said 100 times and will probably say 1,000,000 times before I leave this room, that's not our jobs. We don't have that power. We're not in control of that. Stop trying to do it. I know it's politically expedient, but we don't have control over the immigration laws of the United States of America. None. Zero. Zip. Zilch. It's a waste of time to try to engage in that. You're here unlawfully. You committed a crime. You got the full panoply of due process afforded to you under the United States Constitution. You were convicted of said crime and you were incarcerated to an actual period of time in jail for more than 6 months, 180 days. Your local jail facility can call up ICE, email ICE, text ICE, send a smoke signal to ICE, whatever they do, and say, hey, I've got Joe Smith. Joe's here. He's convicted. He's in my jail. He's going to be here for longer than a period of 180 days. Do you want him to pick him up to deport him? That's all it does. It's not people on the streets. It's not innocent people. It's not people that don't have due process. It's not people who actually aren't in the jail and haven't been punished at all. It just gives an ability for ICE to pick up convicted criminals who are not here lawfully and are not so trivial that they're just in jail for a few days, even a few weeks, even a few months. I'm trying to bend over backwards here to be reasonable and reach a result that might help, because I believe maybe there's only 4 people that were high-profile offenders that ICE came and picked up. Maybe 287G doesn't apply to much. I think when we get on third reader, there's a lot of examples from the sheriffs in various counties of very serious criminals who they subjected to the 287G program. But I guess my position would be this. If even one person is prevented from being harmed, that we could have prevented it, even one, then we should do it. We should do it. If there's even one Rachel Moran, if there's even one individual that could be prevented from being subjected to someone who's a criminal, and they get out, and they really should be deported, and they really should be in federal custody, but we don't want to cooperate for whatever reasons, and then they go out the next day, the next week, the next month, 10 years from now, and they do something else, that's on us. Final words. Convicted criminals, full rights to due process in our jails, 180 days at least. Let ICE come get them if they're not here legally. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam
You're
Speaker,
welcome.
and thank you to the attorney from Western Maryland for understanding the due process concerns that we have been discussing over the last hour or so. And so, yes, this bill does deal with individuals who have been convicted, but it does limit this to 180 days. And so the concern here is that it is really now constraining actually our local detention centers and things of that nature with this amendment. And so for those reasons, I'm going to ask the body to resist the amendment, but I do appreciate the recognition about due process.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no? No. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the negative, the amendment fails.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, recognizing the delegate from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. The amendment is 113223.
Amendment number 1.
Moves to be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you kindly.
You're welcome.
In the years that I've been here, what bothers me most about this bill is the inaccuracies in which we're portraying this issue completely. And I think there are some values in this country that we don't actually have to deviate from to reconcile this issue. I actually don't think this whole issue is about what we do with a person that is here illegally when they're being detained, and how local jurisdictions interact with the federal government. And the leadership that we have provided is a complete mess. In Baltimore County, we don't have 287G. No, we don't. In lieu of that, Baltimore County still detains people past their point of detention. I think a lot of people would find that to be very fascist. And as usual, you have one group of people saying one thing and doing another. But not only are we violating people's rights here, in other places, we're completely blowing up public safety. In a comment made by the gentleman from Prince George's, he said, very few people are being picked up, I believe he said, on Title I level crimes. That might be true, but that's also not the point. And I'd like to provide an example as to why that's the case.
Can you describe the amendment first, please?
The amendment requires that an employee or agent of a state or local correction facility provide notice of the release of an individual at least 48 hours prior to the release of the individual, and that they transfer the individual to the federal immigration authorities provided that the transfer does not extend the time in custody of the individual beyond the individual's scheduled release. So it's a 48 notification and a facilitation if possible. Why is that important? And I'd like to get back to the comments from the gentleman from Prince George's. Reading a local news coverage. In a social media post, ICE Baltimore said they arrested Venezuelan alien in Trinidad gang member Wilmer Antonio and Chinique Navarro March 18th after Prince George's Corrections failed to honor the ICE detainer. According to documents obtained by 7 News, the murder happened on March 3rd, 2024 in the 7600 block of New Hampshire Avenue. Navarro was called on surveillance video, and the witness to the murder gave police a photo of Navarro. According to sources, Navarro confessed to the killing, saying, "The victim looked at him funny." Why is that relevant? Because he was picked up on a traffic offense. The crimes for which we detain and arrest and convict people are not germane to the way we interact with ICE. If this gentleman was the number 2 on the international most wanted gang member list, we got him on a traffic stop. So this whole discussion about the crimes for which we detain a person is completely irrelevant. Law enforcement has discretion. And if they say this gentleman for which we have picked up on a traffic offense should be reported to ICE because he's wanted for murder here or in another country, that is the right thing to do. So we don't need to take the fascist route, as has been done in Baltimore County, and just detaining people past the point of detention without a 287G warrant, without a 287G program. And we also don't need to do what they do in Prince George's, which is not detain them at all. I think it is not the right thing to do to detain people past their point of detention for which they are convicted. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't work with the federal government at all. And the most dishonest thing that this body has done is describe 287G in the way that it has. The Senate president described it as a paramilitary operation. As I understand the word, it means from the sky. 287G is literally people sitting at desks serving warrants and doing investigations. And overwhelmingly, it is for violent crime. So I think this amendment really is the right thing to do. If you pick up a murderer for a traffic stop and law enforcement does their due diligence and identifies that person, they don't actually need a 287G program. But I don't know if what you realize what you're doing here. You're not only banning 287G, we're banning any sort of agreement that any jurisdiction have formally with the federal government. Yes. I think you all should read this bill. Because what 287G is due process. You cannot detain a person past their point of the sentence for which they are serving. 287G deputizes local law enforcement to make that legal. So what this bill does is bans due process. And it also bans a formalized law enforcement agreement for which our local law enforcement uses their discretion. And as we have seen in this state, oh my God, she's so cute. As we have seen in this state, the local jurisdictions cannot be trusted because they are releasing criminals who are arrested on murder and wanted for international gang crimes. So I think this is a real dark moment when we are not only willing to ban due process, but distract the public so. And you know, I think we need a little bit more investigation of this bill, Madam Speaker. I think what I'd like to do is lay this bill over to the next legislative day, and I'd ask for a handful of members to support me on that motion.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Yes, so there was a lot being said there, but I'll
Madam
just
Speaker,
start
point
with
of order.
the latter
order.
portion there first.
Second, please. Let her finish her thought. I'll be right with you, okay? Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. There's a motion to lay over. It's not debatable.
Madam Speaker.
It's not okay, the assistant deputy, parliamentarian.
Madam Speaker. Thank you so much. There is a motion on the table to lay over the bill and has been supported. So we should go ahead and vote and allow that layover if that is okay, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you,
It
Connie.
doesn't need a vote.
Right.
Thank you. So for the body, we're going to lay it over. And those are the rules. But I want to address the body for a minute. I know that it is the right of anyone in this body to lay over a bill. It happened yesterday, right? It happened today. We have 74 days left in session. So I am going to ask you respectfully to use it judiciously, because otherwise the rules will have to be looked up in the future. We don't want it to be overuse. We are here for 90 days. There are 90 calendar days, 90 legislative days. We have a lot of work to do. We have 141 members here, 47 in the Senate, which means we have a lot more members, all right? So if we have to come on Saturdays and Sunday to make sure that we do the work by the time we adjourn, I would like you to look at your calendars and make sure you clear your calendars, because we may have to do that to move the work. This is respectfully stating it, because it's the second day we use it. I just want to make sure that we don't overuse it, because then we're going to fall behind, okay? Let's move on to the next.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
I just have a quick point of clarification with the deputy parliamentarian, please.
Yes.
I just wanted to understand, is that motion on the amendment, to lay over the amendment? Because he was in the process of making an amendment, so I just wanted to make sure we're laying over the amendment.
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify. Yes, with the rule of a layover, the amendment is laid over along with the bill. So that specific rule allows both to be laid over, and the rules do say that shall happen one time. So we are allowing that. And Madam Speaker, if I may, colleagues,
yes,
and thank you, Madam Speaker, for appointing me to the assistant parliamentarian, and I'm only a lowly assistant to the parliamentarian, so he has allowed me to speak on this.
But an important one.
Thank you. Thank
Come
you so
on now.
much. Thank you, Madam Speaker. But I just want to thank everyone for the great debate. I've been learning so much on this floor today around the process when it comes to immigration enforcement and criminal justice. But I just want to remind us, please, when we are discussing amendments, an amendment is a question before the House. Should the amendment pass? The debate and the conversation should be focused in on the amendment and making your best arguments for why it should pass or your best arguments for why it should not pass. That is the question that is before the House when we are discussing an amendment. So I want to help us keep on the amendment. And in addition, let's allow each other to finish our thought, finish speaking, so that we can clearly hear the arguments. Madam Speaker determines who speaks, so let's just be sure to be mindful of that so that we can all orderly make our points. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Very good points. We're going to go over to the layover calendar, House Bill 488. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 488, Election Districts, General Assembly, and Representatives in Congress. Favor report as amended and adopted. Amendment number 1.
I'm recognizing the maker of the motion, the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
My pleasure.
Could the floor leader please rise?
Yes.
I don't know if I have a question. I just wanted to almost pick up and recap from where we were yesterday. It's like the beginning of a Netflix series.
Right.
Position and amendment on the board deletes some of page 39 and all of page 40 dealing with the constitutional referendum portion of this bill on congressional district maps. My position is HB 488 violates the Constitution. Article 3, Section 28 of the map requires a 71 vote margin. While a constitutional amendment is non-vetoable by the governor and requires an 85 vote margin. So to me, this process is also known as a term called log rolling. You're putting these two together. The sponsors are trying to use one vote to bypass constitutional authority on checks on the map. You can't apply an 85 vote threshold to a 71 vote statute and wrap it up into a single legislative vehicle, and that is what we have.
Presuming you laid it over, you were going to be asking the AG for an opinion. I have one. I just didn't know if you got it.
I had one too, but let's see if yours matches mine. You go first.
Mine basically says the method used in this bill is legally sufficient and constitutional. The council advises statutory language inside this bill is a constitutional amendment and is that therefore subject to veto. And again, who would have standing if this were to be pushed in court would only be the governor. And the fact that this is an emergency bill means it requires the same amount of votes as a constitutional amendment.
So you got a better or a different AG opinion than I got, I believe. This is the AG that lost dozens of lawsuits to Donald Trump, correct? I got a notification from a bill that was passed in 2007.
Correct.
And an opinion written in 2011 dealing with early voting.
Correct.
And what I found interesting about the opinion that I received from the Attorney General was I looked up the bill from 2007 and it says early voting in polling places at the title. It's a 3-page bill and the referendum deals with, guess what? Early voting. Now the opinion that says there says all through the matter is not free from doubt. It's legal for that in 2007 on the early voting amendment. Your bill that you have before us today deals with congressional maps with a constitutional referendum snuck in on page 40 of 40. And it doesn't deal with whether the maps are constitutional or whether the voters even want the maps. What it deals with is changing compact and contiguous. That's your point of it, which has existed in the Maryland Constitution for 125 years. Wouldn't you agree?
I'm confused because I thought the whole purpose of layover was to get an AG opinion. Apparently you don't agree is what you're saying with the AG. Because to be clear, this does not violate the single subject matter rule. And again, as I explained previously, the method used was basically legally sufficient in Constitution. That was the advice that was given to us from our lawyers.
So, forgive me, but I believe the attorneys have been wrong on multiple occasions. And
Tend to be.
Tend to be. You just have to look at their track record with suing the federal administration now. So, look, I won't ask any more questions. I won't belabor the point. I am going to move forward with this amendment because I do think it's kind of hysterical, and I realize the pickle that you're in. See? If you turned in the maps without this constitutional amendment attached to it, well, most likely they're under court challenge, these maps are going to get kicked out because they're not compact and they're not contiguous, just like the maps, the last map you all turned in was kicked out. But you're putting in a constitutional amendment to try to have the voters legalize what you're trying to hope to implement. You're hoping the voters legalize it 8 months after we pass it through this chamber. Changing a perspective that went back 125 years, compact and contiguous, by making 2 different standards between congressional maps and legislative maps. And the mere fact that you turned in this constitutional amendment, it's self-admission that this map is not contiguous, not compact, not politically subversive, and that is an absolute fact. So having a constitutional amendment be germane and almost subordinate to the actual maps is just not proper. So you have a bill that's unconstitutional drawn, and you have a bill that's unconstitutional procedurally. With that, Madam Speaker, I gladly move the amendment.
Thank you. I appreciate you holding on to this gossamer thread of somehow that judge's opinion, non-binding opinion, is what's going to carry the day. I have the utmost confidence in the constitutionality of this. I've explained this. I don't want to bore this body anymore with my legal understanding in the breakdown of some of the misapplications of the law, but I know without a doubt that this law is constitutional. I also, as I've explained before, what this is much like the majority leader was trying to do, is providing a point of clarity, because it is always uncomfortable when a judge interprets what we think, especially when we don't say it, because they're supposed to follow something called the plain text rule. And the plain text of this isn't always just limited to the clause, it's limited to the clauses around them, as the courts have genuinely talked about. So in Article 3, Section 3, Article 3, Section 4, and Article 3, Section 3, Section 5, and Section 6 all say legislative districts referring to the General Assembly. But again, I appreciate the jailhouse lawyering, and I get it. But understand very clearly that I have the utmost confidence with the research we have done that was just a very flawed breakdown. And so as this will be, taken to court, which is no great threat, I believe that we will be more than sufficiently, basically in our proposal. Secondly, your second argument, the only person that would have standing, if indeed this was going to be that legal debate, would be the governor, because your argument is basically that he can or cannot veto. I'm not sure which, but it's been made clear to me that he can still, if I guess he chose, veto the maps, and the rest of the amendments would still go to the ballot. So again, I appreciate that you guys are holding on to this thin thread. It will be cut soon, as when you take it to court. But in the meantime, I've made it as clear as I possibly can that the judges do not get to interpret our intent, and we don't get to mislead the public. This happened in 1967, and I don't want to bore you, and in 1972 we were very clear with the ballot question. It had nothing to do with Congress. That's the last time the people spoke. Now what we're doing is giving them another opportunity to speak, just to make sure there is no more confusion on how this is being handled. But again, for this body, it is not up to a judge to tell us what we're thinking and to say, well, if we left a word out, it must have been because we didn't say the word no, not this. And as I said yesterday, we also didn't say that Article 3, Section 4 doesn't apply to municipalities. But by your logic, it should. It hasn't. And to be very clear, I know what the law says. And I also know how we handle process. So I'm more than comfortable with that going to court. And again, there's nobody in this room that's going to have standing to challenge the second part of what you talk about.
So much for brevity. I thought we had a filibuster rule in here for a second. Let me ask you one final question, since you've researched this. And you know my position on this. The Constitution clearly says that constitutional amendments should be single subject in dealing with that purpose of that, and that is not what the bill does. But look, we can agree to disagree, but since you've researched this so much...
Don't say that.
Can you tell me the last time, if ever, there was congressional maps turned in with a voter referendum?
Not to my knowledge. I don't really believe that's
This is the first time in history that this voter referendum and maps have ever been tied together in any type of way. And the purpose is to try to make the map that you're proposing legal.
I guess when you say legal, if you mean give the people, because as I said when I started, we're not here because we want to be. So to be very clear, most people here don't want to do mid-district gerrymandering, as you call it. We don't want to do any of this, but we want to put it to the people, because we have an obligation.
But you're not putting the maps to the people, you're putting the question of compact and contiguous to the people. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted you to answer.
Can you allow him to finish, please? Please allow him to
I do want him to ask the question.
No, wait a minute. Let him finish, please.
I was kind of trying. So the point is, the maps are going to the people.
Let him finish.
If the people have in 2026, they will have a chance to basically vote this map up. If they vote this map, it will go on for 2028 and 2030. If they do not vote for this map, then we will go back to the original maps. We are giving the people an opportunity, in addition to the amendments, to vote on this map, and that's the intention of this bill, to give the people a voice, but it still allow this body to react in a timely manner.
Recognizing now the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So the answer to that question, a referendum has never been tied to a map before. That is so, correct? As far as your knowledge, for the 400 years of Maryland.
There may be somebody else who knows a little more. Go ahead.
Does the gentleman want to yield?
I do yield.
Okay, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Number one, if you will recall, back to 2012, we did have maps on the ballot.
I
They
do.
were approved by the voters. I believe they were called Broken Wing Pterodactyl, and they were sufficiently less compact than what you're looking at now. They were approved by the voters. So there is absolutely a precedent for maps
Let
being
him
on the
finish.
ballot. Hold on.
The gentleman, hold on, let him finish his thought.
And I want to give you a little bit more specifics since you've raised this question about the form of the bill. I will point out to you that we have, in fact, passed bills that contain both code and constitutional amendment in form. We did so in 2014. I see a nodding head here from one of the bill sponsors of that effort. And we actually have a couple of these proposals before us in this very session by members of your party. We have a member of Carroll County from your party that has a bill that has both a constitutional amendment and code in it, as well as one from the minority leader. We had HB 482 had a hearing right after this bill. And guess what? It proposes both code changes and constitutional changes that would govern congressional redistricting in Maryland. So I just find it very difficult to understand how there's confusion on this. Thank you.
So what you said is no. No, just say it. Because in 2011, that became on the ballot through a petition referendum generated by the public, not from the legislature. They've never been banded together. Just say no. It never happened. With that, Madam Speaker, we'd like to roll call on this. Move the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I have an amendment at the desk, amendment number 543224/1.
Amendment number 1.
So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Body, this amendment is quite simple. I'm going to talk about being succinct and not using economy of words. I am not a jailhouse attorney. I don't pretend to be an attorney since I'm not on the Judiciary Committee any longer. Thank you for that, Madam Speaker.
You're most welcome. I hope you're enjoying it. It's a great committee you're in.
I would agree. It's been a great 3 weeks.
Fantastic.
I get out before daylight.
But we do love judiciary.
That's right. My heart will always be there.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. This amendment strikes the map, and it simply prohibits mid-cycle congressional districting. I want to talk about some letters that I've received this week from my district. Multiple members of the majority have reached out to me. Gerrymandering the districts to achieve a desired outcome is just plain wrong. I don't at all claim that current districts make any sense. I've heard arguments that the squiggly line attempts to keep neighborhoods intact, but it appears to me that this is just an attempt to reach a desired outcome. That's number one. I've been represented by 8 different shifts in congressional representation. My representation has been a revolving door. To have one's representation change so frequently is the definition of a broken system. You know, we're here today because Texas started this. It's wrong. California followed. Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio. It's wrong. It's wrong, wrong, wrong that we're here today. And Marylanders shouldn't have to hear it. We shouldn't have to be fighting because someone else is fighting. I've heard numbers like 1967, 1972. No offense to the parliamentarian, I was not alive either one of those years. But I stand for all the unrepresented voters in Maryland, the unaffiliated voters. and the minority voters that will not have representation in Congress. You're eliminating the voice of over 1 million people and 800,000 unaffiliated voters, the fastest growing number of the voter population in the state of Maryland, because they're tired of the two-party system. They're tired of it. They're tired of federal politics bleeding into everyday Maryland life. I'm going to wrap it up by saying this amendment strikes that map. We looked at the map yesterday. The minority leader talks about how it sprawls across the state of Maryland. It covers multiple counties. Sprawls. It doesn't need to happen here in Maryland. We can put our foot down, we can make a stance, and we can represent all Marylanders, all parties. For that, Madam Speaker, I move the amendment.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Madam Speaker, and I would ask that this body reject this amendment. Would the maker amendment answer a few questions for me, please?
Yes, sir. I like your tie.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I like yours.
Yep. It was a difficult decision this morning. I knew that this would come up.
That's why I got the Mickey Mouse tie.
I like it.
So you talked in great detail about how you're not appreciative of all of mid-cycle redistricting. You explained how you thought it was wrong. Did you, when Texas was going forward with their hearings, because you're an elected official, we all are, did you send an amicus brief or anything to let them know there are Republicans that are against this?
I did not.
So have you reached out to any of your Republican colleagues in other states to let them know that this is not the right thing for us to do?
I'm not sure how that has anything to do with this, but I did not.
I mean, given a voice, like you said, that's what you're trying to do, and how people are tired of this. They're tired of politics bleeding into their everyday lives, and I would attribute that largely to this administration and the fact that most edicts are now done via social media memes. And of course, everybody's quite exhausted, but, and thank you for your question. My problem comes with, Texas, North Carolina, Missouri, and Ohio, Utah, Florida. I know Indiana stepped back. I feel like we're being asked to, it's kind of like, when you're in the middle of a bar fight, under the table and hoping things just go well. That's not how I'm built, number one, ever. And I believe at some point you have to stop, quote unquote, turning the other cheek, because what we're being asked that while everybody around us creates chaos, that we have some decorum. Now, I don't believe that this bill takes away from that decorum. And you'll hear me speak time and time again about the fact that by making these maps more competitive, that we are not doing what other states have done. We're in fact forcing the issue, and the issue isn't R&D. The issue is standing up to this current administration. And the way these maps are designed, and we've heard testimony that we had people in our plus 10 district, Democrats win. We had a governor who, I'm going to just go on a limb and say, in a very blue district, the state of Maryland won twice. And then Ehrlich won. So to say that somehow this is partisan, and that's the problem, political considerations versus partisan. Because yes, Maryland wants people to stand up to this administration as a whole. What this is doing is forcing that issue, because it's now requiring everyone to spread out. It's taken away. It's not making their job as congressman easier, but harder. And they have to talk to people, and they have to become more moderate and come to the middle. Because what Maryland does want, they don't need 8-0. They need 8 fighters. They're going to stand up to this tyrannical administration and protect these people. That's what this map was drawn for. I've been a moderate my whole life. It's never a goal, but I'm not going to back down now from a fight and say, you know what, there are rules that need to be followed. There are, and we followed them, because the Constitution told us. The 2 things we're required to do, we did. So I ask that we oppose this amendment, because at the end of the day, number one, we are playing fair. We're doing the right things. And to say for some reason that you don't have a voice because it's a little more positive Democrat flies in the face of history of this state, because everybody sitting here knows that that's not true. And that moderate Republicans who would stand up to this administration can win not 1 but 2 elections. In fact, I would argue he would have gave one hell of a run had he not been endorsed by this administration. So I'm not here to try and do the 8-0 thing. And that's not why we're here to take a voice. And I ask you to reject this amendment because at the end of the day, we have to protect Maryland's interest. We can't have people up there scared of this administration, fearful that they got to do the right thing to stay in this man's favor. They need to do right for Maryland and the people in the middle. And that's what we're trying to send up there, people in the middle, because it's forcing Democrats to step out of their comfort zone just as it would Republicans and talk to everybody and be a voice, not a king. So for all those reasons, I ask you to reject the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise in support of this amendment. And if I could, can I ask the floor leader a question as part of my...
Yes, sir.
Is what is happening in Texas wrong?
I'm sorry? According to the Supreme Court, no, it's not. And we all have to abide by that.
Do you believe, you personally, what is happening in Texas with redistricting is wrong?
As in, yes. My feelings don't matter, it's the law, but yes.
So do you believe that Maryland should do the wrong thing in retaliation to that?
No, I think Maryland should use all the tools at its disposal to fight this tyrannical administration, and that is what we're doing. And the Supreme Court has made it clear this is a tool that's available.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. So here's the hard truth, and I'll just say it. This is wrong. Newsflash. Mid-cycle redistricting is wrong. Every argument I've heard from the floor leader, he's doing his best job on this bill, has been about what's happening in these other Republican states. He always leaves out the Democrat states that are doing it, but we'll just stick with the Republican states. What they're doing is wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. We just heard a previous bill that there was something that the majority party didn't like, so they ban it. Because they don't like it, they ban it. This is the only bill that I've heard where it's wrong everywhere else, and we're also going to do it. Is that what we've come down to in the state of Maryland, where there's no longer a moral high ground? We also do what's wrong? We have an amendment, and I think a well-articulated one, that we're willing to do the right thing in our state. That's what the majority of Marylanders want. They want us to put partisanship aside and do the right thing, and you got the amendment right here. You keep saying, oh, did you submit an amicus, a brief? Well, first of all, like you said, do we have any jailhouse attorneys here? He's not an attorney. No, he didn't submit an amicus brief to what's happening in Texas because he represents Maryland. And in Maryland, we're going to do the right thing. At least we're trying to. So we put our money where our mouth is and said no mid-cycle redistricting. That's contrary to national Republicans, by the way. So I keep hearing people say, well, what are you doing about Texas? What are you doing about the Carolinas? Well, we're doing it in Maryland. We're saying it's wrong. And we're the only ones saying it. So how about that? It's wrong to mid-cycle redistrict for partisan purposes. We're saying it. We're putting it in writing. And we encourage our colleagues across the aisle to also do the right thing, because I'm tired of the moral high ground conversations. This ain't it. You lose it. You lose on this one. And everyone in the state knows it. This is a partisan gerrymandering map. We're saying it's wrong elsewhere, it's wrong here, and we're doing something about it. So I am proud to support this amendment for those reasons. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I actually do appreciate the intent of this amendment, and like many of you, as it's been noted, I don't like mid-decade redistricting. At the very and I might have been one of the first people calling for this, but as I look at what's going on, I don't like it. But let me just put you into the context of where this conversation is actually happening. At this very moment, there is a bill before Congress here, H.R. 4889. It is being introduced by a Republican member of Congress from California. This legislation would ban mid-decade redistricting nationally. All 50 states, it would ban it all at one time, and it would invalidate any maps created this cycle. I actually like that legislation, and I hope it passes. It is in the hands of Speaker Mike Johnson and John Thune in the U.S. Senate. They are in full control of Congress and can pass this legislation and end the national mid-decade redistricting shenanigans once and for all. I suggest those who are concerned about this and understand all states need to be treated the same at this make that call to their member of Congress and ask them to pass it. But to ask Maryland, and Maryland alone, to stand down while the president is running around to every other state asking state leaders to find him votes in the U.S. House of Representatives, that is preposterous. And so, yes, I understand that what the president is unleashing is a scenario where states believe they can redistrict whenever they want, every single election cycle. And we all know that that's a scenario that must end. But that solution has to come from Congress. We've had the minority leader tell us so many times during the last few years, we're not Congress, we can't do these things. So you expect us to solve the redistricting scenario alone, just here in Maryland, and stand down while we're being bullied? I don't think so.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too rise to support the amendment. And I want to bring a little bit different perspective in response to the majority leader. In December of 2025, Republicans in the majority, the overwhelming majority, rejected what you're doing here in this bill. It's easy for you to pass this. It's easy. Think about how hard it was for those Republicans to say no to the president and to put themselves at risk politically. I venture to say it's a lot easier for you to do this than it was for them to be brave. This state, in my 20 years of paying attention to partisan redistricting, every 10 years has gotten more gerrymandered. You've already done what Texas has done. You're going further by eliminating the one possible district where a Republican can get elected in this state. And the gaslighting that has gone on about making the districts fairer, well, you could have done 50-50 districts, 55, but you didn't. Saying it's fairer is gaslighting. And you're only picking up one seat by doing this, eliminating any Republican voice. I can remember just a few months ago being harassed by certain people around here to call Andy Harris for help because there's a Republican control of Congress, and we need his help to protect Marylanders. And he did. He responded to that call. So I don't think this is good for Maryland. I don't think it's good for America. I'm very proud of the Indiana Republicans who did what must have been incredibly difficult to do and bravely rejected partisan mid-cycle redistricting. I support the amendment.
Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I know there was reference to the president, asking for more seats in the House of Representatives, but I guess the same can possibly be said for Hakeem Jeffries wanting one more seat so that way he can be the majority leader in the House of Representatives as well. But this is 100%, and I appreciate the candor from the floor leader. This is entirely about picking up a seat in the House of Representatives. But we want to frame the argument in such a way that we're doing this so that way we can somehow battle what's going on in Washington, D.C. with all these different issues. So I'm going to ask the floor leader, if I may, Madam Speaker, the same question I asked in the Rules Committee. How is adding a huge number of Democrats in Howard and Anne Arundel County, adding that to District 1, going to fix the problems that you've outlined over and over and over again in all this testimony? How is that going to fix these problems?
And maybe I didn't understand the question then either. So you're saying that if the district remains the way it is on this map, that...
I'm not sure how any more concise I can. This is probably the third time.
Which problems are you talking about?
All right, so the problems that you keep outlining are immigration. You're talking about, all these issues with ICE. You're talking about all these things that we don't like what President Trump is doing at the national level, and this is the reason why we're passing this legislation, right?
Okay.
Well, you can see that is a big part of your argument.
I understand.
All right. How is taking a ton of Democrats, disproportionately a ton of Democrats from Howard and Anne Arundel County, adding them to District 1 on the Eastern Shore, and taken away from Cecil and Howard. How is that going to fix the problems that you are identifying?
Because whoever is in District 1 is also going to have to represent those individuals. And we'll have to come to the middle and may again understand that Maryland needs somebody up there fighting this administration. And every single soldier on this battlefield counts. Every one. So when we're fighting for, and I guess we just have a difference of opinion, but our democracy. Our president today just sued the IRS for $10 billion. Guess who's going to be defending this country on this bill? His acolyte Pam Bondi. So I wonder how that's going to settle out. But if you're fine with that, that's fine. We're actually robbing our country, that's fine. However, I'm not. And so any tool that we have at our disposal, because when I get in a fight, I guess I'm a dirty fighter, because I bite, kick, do whatever I got to do. Because I don't believe that I'm just going to go down quietly, put my head down and hope again that we just finally get it right, or that some other state does it for us. Because at the end of the day, he started this fight. And we keep glazing over that moment like it's not a big thing when a president calls and demands 5 seats in mid-cycle redistricting. Like you said, something that's just unheard of, and gets them. And then other states, and I'm not even going to go into the people that we're taking out and the attack on the very few African-American representatives that there are. That's fine, because it's my personal reason for supporting the map. I'm not giving the command reason as to why everybody here is supporting it. So when I'm talking about the moderacy, that's mine. I'm saying that having individuals up there who are not just bootlicking, but actually fighting for this state, not trying to stay on the right side of Trump, but try to stay on the right side of history. Because clearly, what's going on in this country is on the wrong side of history. And you may not see the emergency yet, but I do. And I do not recognize this country that I fought and lost friends for. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes because he started this. And for us to pretend that this is not because of a national issue is preposterous.
So the only way to fix it is to have a Democrat-elected Congress then?
And
the only way you're going to fix it is what you're saying.
And I've said again, however you want to hear it, I don't care if there are DNRs or all as they're willing to fight against this tyranny, just like Larry Hogan was. And he was an R. And there are plenty of Republicans who don't like what's going on. I'm not going to presume what anybody here thinks. But they know we're going off a cliff, and if you don't like it now, come June, it's going to be miserable. So yes.
So we're doing it for ideological purposes entirely. It has nothing to do with fairness in Maryland. So what we want to do is we want one more Democrat elected to Congress because of ideology, and we want to fight the president.
You yourself said yesterday that you've had 2 Democrat congressmen representing your district, correct?
I'm glad we can, I'll be more than happy to tell you why I said that.
I mean, it's fact. You don't have to tell me why. The point is, you said that you've had 2. So again, you're making some presumptions because you, by your leave, have stated that no, it's not impossible for a Democrat to get elected in a Republican district. So again, I'm not presuming that. But I am presuming whoever's elected is going to have to move to the middle and is going to have to fight for Maryland and fight against this. I don't know how many times I can say that. So when you ask why we're doing this and will it help, without a doubt.
I was just saying in an R+10 district that, and the only reason why I said it, I was trying not to call you out on a comment that you made in a rules committee, basically not implying, but actually specifically saying that Eastern Shore residents were closed-minded, and we wanted to make sure.
So that's not what I said.
Let's stay on the amendment, please. Let's stay on the amendment. On the amendment.
No, I was just
let's stay on the amendment, please.
To a comment that he had made in reference to.
Let's just stay on the amendment.
I corrected it then, and I'm correcting it now. That's not what I said. I was talking about the elected that's there now.
All right. So what we're ended up doing, if this is moving out, and finally we're able to get to the core reason why we're doing this. And we're talking about moving to the center. We're not, ideologically, this isn't moving to the center. It's moving farther apart from the center. The only thing that's moving to the center is that we're going to have more elected officials being elected from the center of Maryland between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore City. That's the only thing that's moving closer to center that's going to be from this particular bill. And so, I just wanted to, the reason why I stood up because of the comments that were made in the debate on this particular amendment that I wanted to make sure that we can clarify on the floor, but I do wholeheartedly support this amendment. Thank you, Madam
The
Speaker.
question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? No? The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Explain my vote.
Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Explain my vote. 54% of Marylanders polled do not want mid-cycle redistricting. The majority leader spoke about Maryland leading the way, and should we? Yeah, we should. I've been in this chamber for 12 years, and I've heard you say on other legislation, we need to lead the way. So let me go get a cup of coffee. By the time I come back, maybe it'll change, because it seems to. But yeah, we should lead the way, because 54% of Marylanders want us to. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Cecil and Harper.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
My pleasure.
I have an amendment at desk, 273020-1.
Amendment number 1.
So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So what my amendment does is replaces the map with the map from the Citizens Redistricting Commission under Governor Hogan, which we know, without question, is an absolutely fair map. The one thing I think all of us agree on is we all strive, we all hunger for fairness, right? And our perspectives flavor that, but generally, we all want fairness. And that's all I want as well. I hear 1972, 1969. I'm gonna give you another date. 1965, the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act is the reason we have a minority representative district on the Eastern Shore, because the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was about fairness and to fight gerrymandering that occurred in the South to disenfranchise and wipe out representation and votes of minorities in the South. And it was terrible. And we passed a law to prevent those practices. Right? Why? Fairness. Equal representation. It's a great piece of legislation. But now we're here to disenfranchise the minority party. And how do we know that? We know that map could have been drawn, if we chose to, with multiple 50-50 districts. If we wanted fairness, if we wanted people to move in the middle, right, and stand up for all Marylanders, then we would have had 50-50 districts in there, but we don't. Every district is plus 10 or more D. So it's not about fairness, right? And we've admitted that, and I'm grateful that the majority leader has called this shenanigans. We know this is politically motivated, but what I'm trying to do here is not politically motivated. The Citizens Redistricting Commission held 31 public meetings across the state. The process consisted of a listening tour to discuss draft maps. In addition, to the meetings, the commission received 86 public maps, and not a single elected official was on this commission. The lines were drawn without regard to the interests of any party, candidate, without taking into account the place of residence of any incumbent, office holder, or other potential candidate, nor did it consider how residents of any community may have voted in the past, or with what political party they were registered. Both the congressional and legislative maps from this commission were given a rating of A for partisan fairness for the Princeton gerrymandering process. So when Princeton, and they do a ton of research on gerrymandering, gives those maps an A, that's fairness. And that's all we're asking for here, is fairness. So we know gerrymandering's wrong. U.S. Congress decided in 1965 gerrymandering was wrong because of the ill effects of it happening, which is why they passed that bill to help prevent gerrymandering in the South. Regardless of who's driving this or what we're trying to do, right? We have principles. We have our core beliefs as Marylanders. And frankly, if you disagree with what the president's doing, why are we going to throw away our principles for the president? If you disagree with what the president's doing, you're letting him win by moving these maps, because you're reacting to that. So for all those reasons, I move my amendment, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Will the make amendment yield for questions?
Yes, sir.
So as far as this map goes, what was the most, the population data, what was the most recent data used to create this map?
During 2022.
And what about the precinct data? When was the most updated data for that? Do you know?
2022.
And I'm asking that because, yeah, and of course we saw the maps, and I could go into, GRAC. This is one of the maps that was proposed, I believe, and it was obviously rejected. It was not adopted. But before I do that, I want to step back a little bit, because your comments were very important and interesting. And we talked about the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and I think everybody in this room understands what's getting ready to happen with that. And that there's a case the Supreme Court is hearing right now called Louisiana v. Callis. They're arguing about equal protection versus the tension of equal protection and voting rights amendment. So Louisiana and the National Republican Party are arguing that race should not be used as a basis of drawing any congressional maps. And you cannot sort voters on a racial basis. So we're here today, and it's hard, so because I don't impute anything for any of the colleagues in this room. But on a national level, we're being told that basically it's okay to bifurcate and dissect black communities for political reasons as long as it's not overtly racially motivated. Meaning that they're going to destroy this Voting Rights Act that you were talking about, knowing that this was brought in place to draw districts to remedy past discriminations. So what you're talking about isn't going to exist much longer. So even when we were drawing these maps, we had to be very careful to make sure that we didn't include race as a driving factor, that we couldn't protect our own people, that we couldn't even follow the Voting Rights Act that was put in place to make sure African Americans have a voice and representation. And I'm watching the party on the right, and again, I don't want to impugn to anybody in this room, but on a national level, because this is the country we live in, and that, getting rid of that affects Marylanders. That's why we're here, because national actions affect us. And when that is gone, the southern states, they've already let it be known, Louisiana is going to be the start. And they're going to cut up all the African Americans, and that is a protected class of people. We keep arguing about the minority party here as if it is a protected class of people. And I get it, but somehow it's okay for them to be a protected class, but not African Americans. Because that's where this country is headed. That's where this president is pushing it. And that's what the Supreme Court's going to say. That I have to sit here as a Democrat body in a supermajority, and I have to make sure that I protect Republicans, but I better not think about protecting African Americans. Because that's what's coming. And I've been trying to get in front of it. That's what we're trying to do today. Because it's unacceptable to pretend it, because it was passed in 1965, that it's been enough time. But that's exactly what the Supreme Court is getting ready to do.
Madam
So
Speaker,
now we're
on the amendment,
standing.
please, Madam Speaker.
Apologize.
On the amendment, please.
I'm opposing this map for those reasons. At the end of the day, the argument of fairness, even the Supreme Court said that is almost an impossible question to answer. What's fair? So what's fair to you may not be fair to me. And to say we should have 50-50 districts, and again, the core and crux of the arguments on the floor, we've got to protect people that identify as Republican, but we don't have to protect African Americans. We can let that slide, because that's what our country is saying, and what they did in Texas was just that. They broke up a majority of African American congressmen, their districts, and so at the end of the day, and they use the argument, no, we're not doing this because of race. We're doing this because of party, because the Supreme Court said we could. And so what you're asking me now is to say, you know what, don't worry about that. It doesn't matter how they're changing the rules. We want you to do it what you see as fair. And as I've argued, and I'll continue to say, this map is fair. This map is more representative of Maryland. This map forces people to the middle. You're asking me to sit as a Democratic supermajority and make sure I fight for Republicans when they're not fighting for my people and they're going to extinguish my rights to even have representation in this country.
Recognizing the maker of the motion.
Madam Speaker, well, there's a lot there. And there's a lot said that I didn't say. First and foremost, I was recognizing the fact that the Voting Rights Act created that district on the Eastern Shore to protect Marylanders' rights. Also, my map does not defend Republicans. This doesn't defend Republicans. It takes no position on Republican or Democrat at all. It does the exact opposite. It ignores party affiliation. I'm not asking you to defend Republicans, although as a legislator in the state of Maryland, you should be standing up for Republicans, independents, Democrats, and every party, not just Democrats. So yes, I'm going to ask you to defend Republicans in this body. I'm going to ask you to defend me when I'm no longer a member of this body, and I hope you will. So yes, I am asking you to defend Republicans. But this map does not defend Republicans. This is not an 8-0 Republican map. This isn't a 7-1 Republican map. It's not a 6-2. It is a fair map that does not take in consideration whatsoever political affiliation. Not at all. And guess what? I'm not a DC politician. Right? I have no idea what's going to happen at the federal level. What I do know is what's here in front of us today. What I have in front of us today are unfair maps. We know they're unfair because it wipes out representation. And it's not just unfair to Republicans, it's unfair to independents as well. If all these maps were 50-50, I'm not even asking for 50-50. I'm just saying fairness is 50-50. Fairness is 51-49. That's fair. Anybody you can tell me 70-30 is fair, well, you've never negotiated anything. These maps are just not fair. It's just flatly, plainly unfair. So again, I'm not defending Republicans in my map. I'm defending Marylanders in my map. So with that, Madam Speaker, I move the amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Carroll County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
We've been throwing out a lot of dates here, and just want to go back to November 2002. Good time for me personally. Just got my driver's license. Weighed about 130 pounds. Had all my hair. Life was good. But more importantly, in November of 2002, the election of November 2002 changed things, changed up the makeup of our congressional delegation. Up until November 2002, we had an even split. We had 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats. And like my friend from Anne Arundel County was saying, every 10 years, the Republicans have been hurt by gerrymandering. And so back in 2002, when we still had an even split, of the registered voters of Maryland, 30% were Republicans. Currently, now, here in 2026, we've got 26% of the registered voters or 24% of registered voters are Republicans. So, yeah, we've dropped a little bit, but we haven't dropped that much to the point where we should have absolutely zero representation. The fact that we even have only one member of Congress that's a Republican is just not right. So it's just, yeah, so this amendment here that my friend from Harford County is introducing is absolutely, he's accurate that we need fair maps. And to his point about the work that the commission did back during Governor Hogan's time, around the same time that they were working on that map, I was, in 2021, I served on a redistricting commission in Carroll County. We've got 5 county commissioners, 5 districts. Yes, they are all represented by Republicans, but one district is basically the city of Westminster plus a little extra. City of Westminster, as probably people can imagine, is where the largest number of our Democrats in the county live. The mayor of Westminster is a Democrat. She's a friend. She's been, I respect her. She's been great to work with. So Democrats can get elected in Westminster specifically. And I was on this commission, and we had an opportunity. We could have taken Westminster and split the city of Westminster into 5 little chunks to basically make it impossible for a Democrat to ever get elected in District 3, which is predominantly Westminster. But we didn't do that because we wanted to be fair. So I stand in support of my friend from Harford County, his amendment, because what we're doing with this map is just not right. Thank you.
Recognizing the gentleman from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
And I thank my colleagues for the thoughtful debate. I do just want to reiterate in a much shorter length what I said yesterday about the map, which it is fair. Now, it's not the only way to draw a map. That is 100% correct. There are many ways to draw a map. This process that the parliamentarian was a part of had many submissions of many kinds of maps. And there's lots of different ways to do it. But this map is fair. And I went through respect for political subdivisions, I went through compactness, and I went through communities of interest. I'm not going to do all that again because I don't like to hear myself talk that much. But the map is fair. And so I think we can feel good about that. The process you described to the sponsor of the amendment sounded pretty good, though. So I hope you'll call the congressman who lives in Baltimore County but represents the Eastern Shore and suggest it to him as a bill to put in Congress, because it sounds like a really good national solution. And that's what I think a lot of us on this floor are looking for, a national solution. Unfortunately, we can't amend our way in Maryland to a national solution, but you can call your congressman and ask him to introduce that bill. Again, these maps are fair. These maps respect political subdivisions. These maps in some districts are actually more compact than the current map, and these maps respect communities of interest. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Right. Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed to third reading. Letters of reassignment. The clerk will read the letter.
Household 490, reassigned to Appropriations and Ways and Means. Household 506, reassigned to Economic Matters and Ways and Means. Household 562, reassigned to Appropriations.
Hearing no objection, the letters are ordered journalized. This ends the work at the desk. I want to take a minute to say thank you to everyone for a civil discussion and for being patient. And remember to be kind when you get up, okay? Thank you. Let's go on to appropriations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Appropriations Committee will not meet today.
Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Economic Matters will meet at 2 o'clock for a briefing.
Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Environment and Transportation Committee will have a voting session at 2:30 in the committee room.
Government, Labor, and Elections.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. GLE will not meet. Have a good weekend because it gets real busy next week.
Yes, it will be. Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health Committee will not be meeting today.
Judiciary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Judiciary will not be meeting today.
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will not meet today.
Subcommittee announcements. Recognizing the delegate from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
There will be a utilities subcommittee meeting of the Environment and Transportation Committee, a short organizational meeting at 2 p.m. on Monday via Zoom. Check your inboxes for the link. Thank you.
Any other subcommittee announcements? Seeing none, delegation announcements. Recognizing the chair of the Prince George's County delegation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just as a reminder to the Prince George's delegation, we will be meeting at the steps right after floor session for a quick group photo. Thanks.
Any other delegation announcements? Recognizing the chair of the Baltimore City delegation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I'd like you to join me in congratulating the 2 newly elected members of the Delegation Executive Board. Permission to use the delegates' names?
Permission granted.
Delegate, that was close. Delegate Jackie
It's okay.
Addison. Delegate Jackie Addison elected as first vice chair of the city delegation, and Delegate Malcolm Ruff elected as second vice chair of the delegation. Thank you.
Any other delegation announcements? All right, seeing none, we're going to caucus announcements. Recognizing the Maryland Legislative Latino Caucus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
It's okay.
So I just want to, a quick reminder that right after floor session and after the photo, we will be meeting for the Legislative Review Committee. So let's say maybe around 2:30, just to give some people time to go eat. Thank you.
Any other caucus announcement? Recognizing the new chair of the Black Caucus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
To the members of the Legislative Black Caucus and to the other members of the chamber, there will be an opportunity to sign on to the Legislative Black Caucus priority bills following this session in the lounge for those members who have brought their blue bags with them. Also, I'd like to remind the members, this is an early reminder, there will be breakfast with the governor on Thursday of next week. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the chair of the Vampire Caucus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Just don't take my blood, okay?
That's okay. We're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to be the Lovers Caucus because
Okay.
February is American Heart Month, and it's a crucial time to raise awareness about cardiovascular health. And we have 6 people signed up for the blood drive on Wednesday. So we'd love to double that if we could, Madam Speaker. I love the red. Let's get signed up for the blood drive.
Let's do it. Any other caucus announcement? Recognizing the Women Caucus?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a note to the folks who are participating on the Legislative Review Committee of the Women's Caucus, we will be meeting at noon virtually on Monday rather than our standard 5 o'clock meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other caucus announcements? Seeing none, let's go on to personal or guest announcements. Recognizing the delegate from Prince George's County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just would like to have the body to join. First, can I permission to use
The delegates' names?
Yes.
Absolutely. Granted.
On the behalf of Delegate Ivy and Delegate Therese, we're having a 47 district night, which is going to be on Monday in the Senate building. Please join us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other personal
6
or
o'clock.
guest? 6 o'clock. Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and
welcome.
good afternoon, colleagues. Permission to use delegates' names.
Permission granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
On behalf of Delegate N. Scott Phillips, Delegate Jones, and myself, we'd like to introduce the Doctor of the Day today, Dr. Bernita Taylor, who is our fellow constituent. She is retired from family practice. She is still very active with MedChi, as well as her church family, St. Bernardines in Baltimore, and she is also a world traveler. So please join me in welcoming our Doctor of the Day, Dr. Bernita Taylor.
Any other personal or guest announcements? Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
There is another district having a reception Monday evening, so permission to use delegates' names.
Permission granted.
On behalf of Delegate Cheryl Pasteur, Delegate John Cardin, and myself, please join us at the District 11 reception Monday evening in room 170. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other personal guest announcements?
Madam Speaker, I apologize.
Okay, recognizing the lady from Howard County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to announce that we will be having District 9 District Night on Monday evening at 6 o'clock. There will be refreshments, and please come and join us in HB 180. Thank you.
You're welcome. Recognizing the Minority Whip.
Not to be outdone, the District 4 night is also Monday, presuming we get out of here at a reasonable hour on Monday. I'll try to make that happen for you guys. But I think it's 6 to 8, District 4 night in the Senate Miller Building. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Any other personal or guest announcements? Seeing none, this is Friday, so what happens on Friday? Pages. Let's thank the pages, recognizing the protocol chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's, guess what? Sunshine time. All right. I want all of y'all to know, wasn't they wonderful this week? I think they waited on every single one. If I didn't see them running up and down these aisles, boy, with y'all coffee and all y'all papers, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Me and Madam Speaker just love all of you and all of you delegates. I want y'all to know they will not be here next week. They're going to be coming back sometime within this next 90-day session. But I just want to thank y'all again for taking care of all these wonderful delegates this week. It might have been a tough week, but it's going to get even tougher. I just didn't want to say it was going to get easy. But anyway, thank you, Pagers, my sunshines, for being so wonderful this week. All right, that's it for you. Thank you very much. Y'all thank them now. These are y'all sunshines. They are the best. You can be excused. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
And I just want to let everybody know it's going to be tough, but these pages will be taking care of y'all for the next week. And y'all have a great weekend. It's not going to snow. Thank you.
You're welcome. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? The clerk will take the call. There being 131 members present, the House is still in session. Recognizing the majority leader, please listen up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stands adjourned until Monday, February 2nd at 3 o'clock p.m. 3 o'clock, everybody.
Have a blessed weekend, everyone. Stay safe.